We're joined today by Ed Ra. He's the ranking member of the Assembly Ways and Means Committee as we head into the legislative session here in 2026. Assembly Member Ra, thanks so much for doing this. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Obviously, this is going to be a very interesting session, as it always seems to be, but it's an election year. We have a new mayor in New York City, and I want to start there with you. So you've heard some of your colleagues on the other side of the aisle talk about Zohran Mamdani and his policies and some of his proposals, fiscally, that is, saying that he has a mandate from the New York City voters and that it's going to be up to those in Albany, really, in a lot of ways, to help further that agenda. What do you make of that narrative right now from those on the other side of the aisle, especially as we look towards the budget talks as we get into the meat of the session?
Well, it's 100% true that he's going to need a lot of help from Albany to implement his agenda. It's going to cost a lot of money, and he needs authorizations from Albany to do any income tax increases, any corporate tax increases. And one of the things we've seen over the last several mayoral administrations is differing levels of cooperation from Albany and relationships they've developed with Albany, both with the governor and with the legislature. So, some think maybe he has built relationships over the last few years that will help in that matter. But Albany is going to have a lot to say about how he implements his agenda.
Have you built any of those relationships with him in his time?
I know him. I've had conversations with him in the members lounge and on the floor. I don't know that we agree on a lot of issues, in particular fiscal policy, and I'm sure as he's pushing for some of these things, I will be one of the more outspoken opponents of them.
That's what I was going to ask next. What is your role when they're working on that other side of the aisle and also within the committee in terms of that agenda and what it looks like moving forward? What's your role in that?
Yeah, so, a lot of it is going to start with what we see in the executive budget proposal, which will come out about a month from now, a little less than a month, I guess, at this point. And what the governor wants to do with regard to taxes. She's talked a lot about not wanting to increase income taxes, but I think she's been careful with how she phrases that. So I think what we're likely to see is some attempt to increase corporate taxes. That issue's really already going to be on the table because we do have an increased surcharge on corporate taxes on businesses over a certain amount of revenue that is set to expire at the end of this fiscal year. So that will be up for renewal. So I think the push will be to not just extend that, but possibly increase it, which is something that my colleagues in the majority in both the Senate and the Assembly have advanced the last several years in their respective budget proposals.
Yeah, the corporate tax rate, that was set to be cut from 7.25% to 6.5% beginning in calendar year 2026. The Fiscal Policy Institute estimates that's going to cost the state $300 million in the next fiscal year, 2027. Where do you stand on where that tax rate should go? I mean, should the legislature let that sunset? Should they try to extend that? How do you pay for that?
Well, that was first put in back in 2021, 2022, and we were such an outlier amongst the states. Coming out of the pandemic, pretty much every state was cutting tax rates. We were, I think, the only one that was increasing them. It was subsequently extended in another budget by Governor Hochul. But as we see year after year, we are rated amongst the worst business climates in the nation. We're usually dead last. Every now and again, we jump all the way up to 49th. So we need to really be careful, and we shouldn't be increasing taxes on New York State businesses.
Yeah, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you about from the Fiscal Policy Institute, because I think you've heard a lot of those on the other side of the aisle use this as sort of their motivation or as a part of their argument to raise corporate taxes more, as we should say, as we spoke about with the comptroller in the past. The Fiscal Policy Institute did a report back in November saying high earners move out of New York less often than working and middle class and do not move in response to tax hikes. I know out-migration has been a big topic in the last few years, but in this case, the Fiscal Policy Institute is saying the high earners, who many are asking for more taxes, are not leaving even in response to those taxes over the course of the last decade. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that there's a lot of data out there that you could spin a particular way. I tend to spar with that particular entity each year at the budget hearing when they testify. But the fact of the matter is our state has a smaller and smaller percentage of the millionaires in this country. States like Florida and Texas are increasing their share of them. And there's a reason for that. It's never been easier if you're a high income individual to make your home somewhere else outside of New York.
I asked the budget director a couple weeks ago about the rate of spending and if that's sustainable in New York State, as we reached what $252 billion in the last one. He said it should be around the same ballpark if we're going to forecast in about a month or so. So he said, well, mental hygiene, school aid, Medicaid, we have spent more, but we think that spending relates to what the need is in New York. How do you respond to them, his argument there in terms of where the spending is going over the course of the last decade?
Well, we had from last year to this year's budget the single largest year-to-year increase that we had since the Great Recession. Um, it is not sustainable. It's not just me saying this on the Republican side of the aisle. Comptroller DiNapoli, year after year, in reports about the budget, has talked about the fact that our recurring revenues and our recurring spending do not line up. And in fact, when we adopted this year's budget, I identified in the state financial plan $28 billion in out year deficits. So, you know, they just don't line up. And eventually, if we have a downturn in our tax receipts, we're going to have a major problem.
Yeah, and sort of along that conversation, it circles back to the beginning of this when it comes to Zohar Mamdani. And within that, the budget director talked about universal child care as being one of the initiatives that we're going to see once again by the governor in this budget. Is there room in the budget, would you say, for the state to support anything that Zohar Mamdani is proposing right now? Does it work?
I think there are ways to reprioritize things. We're a state that gives billions of dollars to economic development programs that report after report shows don't deliver their bang for their buck. There's the Hollywood tax credit that many of us have been critical of as being too generous. So we can reprioritize things and support issues like childcare and better support for childcare. But I think that the bottom line is I don't believe that we can spend our way to being a more affordable state.
Then how do you get to being a more affordable state?
I think you have to better prioritize your spending. I think when you're spending money on items like I mentioned, economic development programs, why don't we have a real set metric that we're measuring these programs by? That a standardized metric and saying, are we getting our bang for our buck? If we're not, let's try something else. And we don't really do that. These programs have been very unsuccessful. We give lots of money to different corporations. We spend money to build facilities that end up empty, and the New York taxpayers are left holding the bag.
Well, one more on this, because I know this is a point of contention for the fiscal watchdogs out there, is the letters TBD at the end of some legislation. Is that going to be also something that you're looking at, as you always are? But you do see proposals, you see legislation written up, in the end, fiscal impact says TBD. Is that on your radar too right now?
So you're getting into a bit of a nerdy topic that is one that is a real pet peeve and pet project of mine. New York State doesn't have anything like the Congressional Budget Office, a kind of nonpartisan entity to score budget proposals and bills. I wish we did. I've had a piece of legislation for many years that would create such an entity. And believe it or not, the state Senate actually a few years ago passed a bill that would create a nonpartisan kind of policy and budget office, but it hasn't advanced in the assembly. So it really is something that we should be doing.
Let's shift, because we talk about money, and I think utility bills is the other big one right now in New York State. And I think New York's in an interesting spot when it comes to energy policy with the CLCPA in 2019. But then you just saw the energy plan about a month ago scale some of that back. It appeared when it comes to the governor saying we now want to all the above approach. Where is New York when it comes to this?
Yeah, I think that in all of the above approach is something that realistically we have to be taking. It's very clear that the grid can't support all of these mandates pushing everybody to electrification. And it boils down to affordability and reliability. That's what our ratepayers need. They need to know that Their homes will be heated in the winter. They need to know that they're going to be able to afford their energy bills. So, we talk about some of the developments that have happened since we left session. Talk about new nuclear facilities in New York State, approval of the Northeastern pipeline for natural gas to come into New York State. Those are positive developments and movements toward an all of the above energy policy, which is really what we need to be doing rather than putting on blinders and going full speed ahead with green energy mandates.
With that in mind, with last week, one of the last bills the governor signed was to rescind the 100-foot rule. Now, people might not fully get that and understand what that means, but to you, that is an environmental. Environmentalists cheered that. How does that impact all of this in this conversation?
Well, I think it is a step in the other direction from some of these other actions I just talked about. The bottom line is that made it more cost efficient for somebody to convert their home from oil to natural gas. I don't see how that is a positive thing for the environment. It may not be completely emission free, but it's certainly better for the environment than oil. So I don't know why we would want to make that more expensive. And it has the potential to have a really negative impact on development. Making development of housing, which has been a big topic over the last few years, more expensive.
The environmental side on that aspect of the rescinding 100-foot, they said this rule forced everyday New Yorkers to pay more than $600 million annually. But on the other side, you had National Grid come out and say this is going to cost everyone more when it comes to consumers. So who is it going to cost more?
Well, if anybody wants to get back to me when this is fully implemented and show me where ratepayers save $600 million, I'm going to be all ears. But I don't think that's going to be the case. The bottom line is it's going to drive up the cost for developments, for individual homeowners who want to convert to a cheaper and a greener source of energy and natural gas.
Does any of this come down to utility companies? I know there's been some thought that maybe they should be regulated more, that the Public Service Commission needs to be doing more to counteract their rate cases when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the PSC could be more active, in fighting for the ratepayer. But I also think we need to understand that a lot of the mandates that have been put on them are driving some of these increased costs. So it's a combination of both.
Finally, here, and since I have you, Bruce Blakeman now looks to be a GOP front runner. I guess when it comes to running for governor, you were by his side when he was doing his tour. How do you feel how this all went down when it came to Lee Stefanik stepping down and now Bruce Blakeman seeming to be the GOP nominee?
Well, Congresswoman Stefanik obviously has made a national name for herself. Would have been an excellent candidate. County Executive Blakeman went out this fall though and started to kind of explore a run after he had really demonstrated that he could attract the type of voters it takes to win statewide in New York State, in a county like Nassau County that does mirror the state in many ways. So I'm excited to have him at the top of the ticket and get out on the road and campaign and hopefully finally elect a Republican governor for the first time since Governor Pataki.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Ed Ra, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks.